There we go. We do also have lots of board members and committee members in attendance on the call this evening as well. So as you're likely aware, over the past couple months, we've continued the difficult process in planning for an uncertain club season. We had our last meeting earlier in October with some updates and information that we provided those that were in attendance. We will present some updates as we currently have in place. Our indoor competitions committee has been very active and involved over the past couple of months, providing feedback, helping with direction as we've been trying to figure things out. Please be aware, though, that what we're presenting information, we're presenting some provisional plans, understanding though that this is all fluid, and as we proceed, there is possibility of adjustments as we move ahead in the upcoming months. Obviously, everything depends on COVID status and health restrictions at any given time, as you're likely aware. I'm just going to do a screen share now. Anthony, are you able to follow along with the chat, just to make sure as we go along, if there's questions, we'll address them as best we can as we go along here.
That's the plan.
Okay. All right. So just some protocols, some housekeeping here. So we have a PowerPoint presentation to present again, and as people are probably familiar, there's a chat box on the side. If you don't know where it is, click on the bottom of your screen and you'll see a chat icon, and then you'll be able to type into the chat box. If you do absolutely need, you can just unmute yourself. Everybody's muted right now, so you can unmute yourself and ask over the microphone as well. We won't be offended. We'll address questions as we go along, and we'll address questions that you might have, any questions you might have, as best we can answer them at the end of the presentation as well. And we talked about muting the microphone already. We sent the agenda out earlier this afternoon with the email with the Zoom information, so it's there for your reference. We'll be talking just a quick update on return to play, a few updates on early signing, club information forms and registration information, season and competition planning on where we're at right now, and that we'll do a review of. Provincial national championships, coach requirements. Scott will do a little update on a safe return to the court. Adam's going to do a little plug for our auction, and then we're just going to have some discussion and answer questions at the end as well. So first of all, just with return to play, get someone else there. As you're all aware, the last 4 weeks, pretty much, well, the entire province has been in the COVID response level red or critical level, and we've more or less been in a full lockdown, especially as it relates to sports, especially as it relates to recreation facilities. So, as you've also likely heard, the province announced yesterday that these restrictions have been extended and will continue another 4 weeks until at least January 8th. So our most recent plans and anticipation was that, or hope, I guess, maybe not anticipation, was that following the first lockdown period here, that we might have been in tryouts or training as of this coming weekend, but obviously that's delayed now. So now we're looking at January 9th as the earliest that we'll be back on the court, and that's if everything goes well. So this would, with the assumption, be a return to play stage 3A, where training is allowed but not competition. That's with the assumption that we'll bump down from the code red critical to an orange restricted pandemic response level. At that time, I can't imagine the province will bump down 2 categories. But regardless of that, we will be still in a position, ideally, hopefully, that we'll be allowed to train and allow some tryouts for those that might still require or are planning to do that, but not competition. we will emphasize and stress that any of that training and any of the planned tryouts that are planned and that could proceed at that point would be required to follow our RTP, our return to play guidelines and protocols. So we remind everyone, we stress everyone to make sure at that point that we review the information, we review the protocols, we review the guidelines that and we adhere to them. As we get to that point. When the response level drops to yellow or caution or at a time that is deemed safe and approved, competition will be allowed, and that will be February at earliest, though, regardless of what may be announced in January. Even if we do bump down into an orange restricted level in January, we will still wait until February at earliest to begin any competition. We do have a current plan in place right now to return to some competition at that point. But obviously, if things continue to stay perhaps in an orange restricted level, we would need to adjust. We would need to pivot. We would need to just delay our competition start accordingly. We've also heard just about yesterday, today, and in the last week or two about the approval of the COVID vaccine from Pfizer, at least specifically as it relates to Canada. But the vaccine's not going to expedite things immediately, and I think we have to accept and understand that it'll still be until later in the summer or even into the fall of 2021, when it's projected that things could return to some more normalcy in regards to our day-to-day lives and possibly having minimal or no restrictions, health restrictions, and that'll be a time that I think we will all appreciate and really, really look forward to. I think I just also want to stress and re-emphasize that I think the club season or the club season will be different, and we'll need to accept that and understand that. There will be different expectations. We'll need to set different expectations and goals in regards to the season as coaches and as clubs from what our goals usually may be. Someone else. And I'm going to flip things over just in the agenda. We're going to talk next about some early signing and club information and registration information. And I'm going to flip that over to Anthony to address.
Sure. I'll start off by saying I know John mentioned earlier, but he is recording, so we will have this posted on our website either tomorrow or the next day. So if you miss something and you feel like you might just be able to review it on the video, you don't necessarily have to jump into the question, but if you do, feel free. The last slide there that John just jumped over just had our numbers for our early sign teams so far. I don't know if, can you go back there, John?
Oh, sorry, yeah, there we go.
This was just more of an FYI thing. For 16U, 17U, 18U, our numbers are a little higher, especially on the girls' side, because that's where the early signing initially opened back in near the start of the school year. And since the latest couple early signing windows, we have had a few more teams jump in from 15U, 14U, and as you can see there, the 113U. So total, we have 70 so far that are registered. These wouldn't necessarily be full teams, but just any team that has registered at least one athlete onto the roster so far. Next slide. So just a note here on your club information forms. Some of you have sent them in already, and that's great. Others can get started on this because this is one of the things that you can do already is get your information into us, get your coaches into us, because they can get started on their coach compliance and screening certification stuff into us. And I think right now all of the processes are moving along pretty quickly, so it shouldn't take too long. If you get on top of it now, you'll have everything ready to go by our various deadlines. We are planning on opening the actual registration with the membership payments coming up on January 8th now, is the new date we moved to. There's a possibility it could still be delayed, but that is the date you should plan for at the moment. We will be charging our development membership for all athletes so far. Later in the season, that could be upgraded to the competitive memberships. if and when we do begin competition. But for now, we would start registering everybody to lower membership just to make the entry a little bit lower for everybody. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but for the first wave, so to speak, of competition, teams will need to be registered by January 18th. So we have a good idea of what our numbers look like at that point, and then we can kind of plan through a little bit better for what our competitions may look like. There might be an opportunity, or the chance that Volleyball Canada looks to push nationals into later in the year. Could be into June. They've even discussed July and August. I know they sent out their competition survey there, I think end of November, early December, and I believe they've gotten some results on that so far. I don't think we've received anything formal, but from what I've heard, it sounded like most people were more interested in not going any later than June. So that might be the way they are leaning, but I guess we'll probably know more coming into January here, late January, early February. Is that all I've got here, John? I think we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, I'm going to, sorry. Okay.
Sorry, just Charlene has a question here. For coaches, for their memberships, it's going to be the same level. It'll still be that $33, Charlene. Okay, regarding tryouts here, we are going to be strongly encouraging clubs to not hold tryouts at all, if at all possible, and just open sign athletes. This is mainly to avoid situations where clubs are hosting tryouts either on the same day or even through the same week. Athletes going from tryout to tryout would be a huge issue right now. So it's one of those things that should probably be reserved for small communities where maybe they have 20 kids showing up for one team, and then those kids, unfortunately, maybe don't end up going anywhere else. But that would probably be the only safe situation right now to be hosting tryouts. Not right now, but coming in January. We are hosting a players looking for teams list. It should be posted on our website soon. That link is available on our website for if any athletes are still looking. They can go and register through there. The information will be posted on our site for clubs to go and find, and that might be a great spot for you guys to find athletes to fill out your team. If a club does plan on hosting tryouts, we ask that they let us know the details, and we would encourage them again to do their best if they know when other tryouts are, to definitely schedule around them as opposed to really stacking them up one after the other. Because again, athletes are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to go to multiple tryouts, and that's just something that we probably have to save them from themselves doing. If you are hosting tryouts, you will have to follow all of the provincial health orders that are in place. I'm just going to look at a few of the questions here that we have in the chat.
Yeah, so the first one of the questions there, Anthony, is the membership fee 100% refundable if no volleyball is played? So I would probably say it'd be something we'd definitely look at if no volleyball is played, especially that more than likely 100% is refundable. We're obviously very optimistic that some volleyball will be played, some training will occur, and in that case, the membership fees would more than likely not be refundable. But obviously, we would look at the situation if that ended up happening.
Yeah. For Donna there, that deadline is just so we have an idea of team numbers, because right now the first scheduled event could be as early as the first weekend of February. So the 18th of January would be 2 weeks in advance of that event. So that's why that deadline would be in there for that one. And to Jared's point, that is something we've discussed. And depending on how things look for that first competition, we could possibly use that weekend to host tryouts like that. But it's just not something that we have formally finalized yet. It's something that we're still talking about. John, do you want to jump in on that one for Ken?
Yeah, so on Ken's is just the note, he's stressing that tryouts shouldn't be allowed, and definitely, obviously, that's what we're preferring. And what we'll probably end up doing is doing another poll with clubs on a couple of different things. Again, just trying to see where people are with facilities, and we know that that's still a problem out there, and where they are with that. But one of them would be, are you still planning on running tryouts? And if so, we do require the information to at least be forwarded to us, so we understand what clubs are doing or not doing in relation to that. And if we can prevent it, we would try and prevent it.
Exactly, and that's the same thing to James' point there. We can do our best, and we can do our due diligence to make sure that athletes are being as safe as they can be. But really, without saying no tryouts at all, there's only so much we can do. Like, parents and athletes are going to make the choices they're going to make. Athletes are going to school. They might be doing other activities. We can really only control the volleyball environment, and we'll do our best to do that. But I think it's probably too difficult to say that with 100% certainty that we can make sure everybody's doing everything perfectly. We can jump to the next slide, I think.
Okay.
Okay, so season and competition planning. This is what we touched on a little bit earlier, but one of the things that you've gone way too far back there.
There we go.
Okay, we're back. As John mentioned, the season is going to look a lot different, and coaches, players, everybody, parents should be expecting, their expectations for the season should be different. It should really be a season where training is going to be the focus, should be the focus for most teams. Competition, if it happens at all, is going to be very limited. As John mentioned earlier, we would have to get to a yellow level to be able to host competition at all. So even if we are starting up in early January with some training and stuff, it's probably a tall order to expect to be into a yellow zone by February. That is what we're planning for right now, because those are the gym times we have, and we want to be optimistic. So that is the plan. But so right now we do have the 4 weekends in February and the first 3 weekends of March, which we had held for premier events. We will hopefully be using that time for some modified competition formats where teams would essentially come in for a couple-hour window. You would play a small round robin, 2 or 3 games, depending on what we can figure out would be a safe amount of time to be in the gym, a safe amount of people to be around. All of those factors will come into it. And then you would be there for how much time you'd be there, and then you would be out. So you'd realistically expect to get 2 or 3 games one weekend, and then you would have 2 weeks off of competition. As we mentioned there, we have those 7 weeks, so we would be scheduling different categories every second weekend. So just for instance, maybe we have girls on one weekend, boys the next weekend, girls the following weekend. It won't look exactly like that, but that's kind of the idea. Just let me catch up here with where we are. We have gym time booked at Dakota Community Center, Sport for Life, and U of W. So we do have capacity for a lot of teams, somewhere around 170-ish. I don't expect that our numbers will necessarily be that high this year. So we should be within our capacity, at least in terms of how many teams that we can accommodate. Again, assuming that all other health restrictions are allowing us to actually be in the gym competing with moderate numbers of people around. In terms of clubs hosting tournaments, this is something that we would be allowing, but we would want to work with clubs in terms of dates and everything else, mainly to try and make sure that they have their categories on hopefully the same weekends that we are running ours. That way that if someone were to compete that weekend, they could potentially compete 2 weeks later in one of ours, as opposed to being on an opposite weekend of us where then they couldn't participate on either of those other weekends. One of the main tenets will be that for competition, clubs will have to take that 2-week break between competitions for the virus incubation period. Besides that, clubs would still have to follow whatever tournament guidelines are in place. For the most part, it's going to be very small groups in the gym at a time, on the court at a time, and just like we keep reiterating, it's just going to look a lot different than it has the past number of years. Just going to check the chat here quickly.
There's a hand up by James. I don't know if James, you can type in the comment or question you might have.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, on Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Just thought it was easier than typing. So I'm not 100% understanding the the competition. So every weekend between February 5th and March 20th, you've got the facilities, and then you'll be hosting
certain age categories.
certain age categories. And then, so I'm assuming that it's scrubbed or washed then between. So like the first week, then they're going to scrub it, and then a different age category the next week. But it will have been scrubbed, so it really shouldn't matter, right?
It'll be scrubbed between each wave. So we would have, theoretically, there would be 4 waves each weekend. We would have a Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and Saturday evening.
And between each wave, it's going to get scrubbed.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
For Christian there, yes, pretty much. Well, I shouldn't say that for sure. You could play in a 15U tournament one weekend and then a 16U tournament 2 weekends from now. I don't know if we would necessarily recommend that, just to be more sure of what our numbers will be week to week, but it's not outside the realm of possibility at this point. There are still a lot of unknowns on what we will be allowing and won't be allowing. That's that particular component is probably a little ways away in terms of our making a decision on it.
And I was just going to add, Anthony, that probably would be a question that we know that facility access is very limited. The likelihood of most clubs planning tournaments this year was probably low, but I know that there's still some out there that were, and that would be something that we probably would want to follow up with them directly, or hear from them what their plans might be.
Absolutely. And if once we get into February, we are still in an orange level, we would be looking to, I was going to say auction off the time, but more like lottery off the gym time for clubs for training if we're not able to access for competition.
The last thing we want is, I keep saying this, the last thing we would want is for it to go to Winnipeg minor basketball.
Exactly. Got to keep these kids playing volleyball.
Okay.
All right, I think we can jump to the next one here. Are you jumping back in here?
I can touch base on this one for sure. Yeah,
Sure,
we understand challenges. Challenges are still facility access for teams to even train, never mind competitions right now. We also accept and understand that what we're presenting here is competition based out of Winnipeg, based out of Dakota Sport for Life and U of W right now. Accessing facilities in Western Manitoba is a challenge. I know we're in communication with Russ and Brandon University. There was a potential of another facility that Dean Oakton had arranged to coordinate potential competition out in the Brandon area as well. But that's still a challenge and still something we're working on. And if the format is a 2-game per weekend type of a structure, having someone drive in from Dauphin or even Verdun or whatever it might be to come in and play 2 games might not be very fair or very worthwhile. But if we can try and coordinate something in that Western region, that would be a goal as well. The other thing that we've identified is that, what we're planning right now, let's say even if it's a 4-team cohort, playing 3 games in a row, maybe in a row, that's probably 4 hours of competition. That's still that's a very long duration for, even 4 teams to be on 2 courts at the same time. The risk definitely is high in that nature. So, even in that regard, even in this structure that we're kind of proposing, it's uncertain whether we would even meet the health restrictions at that given time. Anything else, Anthony, you want to add on in terms of the challenges there?
Outside of maybe clubs just being uncomfortable selecting athletes sight unseen, I think that would be a challenge, but at the same time, the focus this year is probably just keeping kids in gyms. Even if you're taking athletes you don't know, I think it's important, even if you're fielding a team this year, that maybe you don't plan on retaining it all for next year, as long as you're you're getting kids in the gym this year, that's going to be the important thing.
We were asked about what would entry fee costs would be, and it would be, in line with what a premier tournament entry fee would be. So, if we're looking at a 3-team event, it could be around $250. So just if people were really interested in knowing, or, to plan on, it could be 200, it could be 300, depending on what our costs would be for that given block of time, that given facility, referee costs. We would likely need to hire an additional staff to oversee and make sure COVID protocols and guidelines and procedures are followed. So athletic therapy, those are our normal costs that we normally incur. And we break even for the most part on our premier events and our competitions. So that's what we'd be looking at for entry fee costs.
John, can you touch on Jason's comment there in the chat?
What's the question?
How can we expect to start practice on the 9th when kids are homeschooling until the 18th? I wasn't aware of that. Have they extended the Christmas break?
I'm not sure what.
Or are they just not in school? I'm not.
The government has put a remote learning for most what grade, I guess 7 to 12 for sure, till the 18th. We don't potentially have students back until the 18th in their buildings.
I'm not sure what that, if schools have gyms available on the 9th, when it could be available. I don't know what the status of school would have to do with that. If maybe I'm not understanding that correctly. Pat?
I was just going to say, the question I think is, how can you expect to start a practice on the 9th? Like our gyms, as an example, we won't be able to get into our buildings at all if it's remote learning, because you're not allowed in the building.
Correct. Yeah. So
I don't think most clubs are in schools anyway, though, right? Any club that has space right now is probably at a community club or church, something of that nature. That's I don't think schools are really going to be open at all this year. I wouldn't necessarily expect.
And I heard someone else there. I don't know who that might have been.
It's Lisa White from BU. I think what he's asking is the public health is trying to keep them separated for that 2-week bubble after Christmas by going remote learning from 7 to 12. So are we going against public health by allowing them to not be separated? If I'm correct, is that what you meant, Jason?
Yeah, I think our protocols that we're going to be following are different from the education protocols. But it would definitely be something that we'll consider and look into further about the start date. But if facilities are allowed to open and sport is allowed to re-engage on the 9th, we would probably go in line with that.
This decision by the government for the education to go remote 2 weeks after Christmas. So I would guess that it would be highly unlikely that they would open sports facilities if they're not having the kids return to school during that time.
And that's not what is in place or what's understood right now, Charlene. But I accept, I guess, that could happen.
Yeah, and I would say if that's, again, realistically, we'll check with Sport Manitoba on that, see what their understanding of it is, whether they have to follow up with Manitoba Health directly or not, and we'll see what they say about it. And if they wouldn't be expecting to open sports stuff until the 18th, we'll have to adjust our deadlines, or rather our start times.
Deadlines, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason.
John, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I have a question too. Us not knowing if we have a gym space yet, and I'm sure there's other school-based teams like that. The other problem is there's been a pre-signing period. Is it possible to get a list to see, for instance, how many soccer athletes are already involved in other clubs that have pre-signed? Because we may not have the numbers even to make some of those lower age group teams work.
Yeah, you can go online. So can you see our website right now?
Yeah.
So under youth club,
Okay.
you could pull down early signed athletes,
Oh, okay, great.
and I think this would open up.
Okay. I didn't know that was there. Thanks.
Yeah, and then you can take a look at all of the different age categories, and all of the different teams. So this is 17U girls,
Okay.
which has a good number of teams. You can go to 14U boys is listed there.
Okay.
A couple of teams listed, not many, but that's where you would see where the athletes, the pre-signed athletes are listed.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, keep moving. So the next is just provincials, nationals. I'll take this one. So as you know, the current plan is still the national champion or provincial championships are the last couple of weeks of April, first weekend of May. National championships are over 2 or 3 weekends throughout May, as is the current. Oh man, keep flipping all over. As is the current plan. There is some discussion, though, from Volleyball Canada about the potential of extending the season, extending the indoor club season even as late as August. This is just discussion stage right now. There's obviously lots of elements at play here, but it is something that it is being considered and discussed from the national level and even within each province. So that is something that still could happen regardless of whether your club would still participate in it or not. In cases where the season might be extended, we would potentially move our provincial competition accordingly. Would we have our provincials in July if nationals were in August? Maybe not, but could we have them in June, mid-June, even later June? If facilities are available, we have started sourcing additional court time to see if we might even be able to run provincial championship competitions even as late as then. So I will also add that if any changes are made regarding nationals, Volleyball Canada we would expect to hear from Volleyball Canada by around mid to later January at the very latest. They wouldn't wait until February, March to make this decision. They would decide in mid-January. Nationals are the same. You haven't heard from them. Status quo, or you would hear from them if they were looking at a later date. I can't follow the chats there, Anthony, but if there's any questions.
Yeah, I'm just answering them in the chats for the most part.
Okay.
We've just had the one additional one since we've already been talking.
We're going to continue on now. That's primarily where we are with the season itself, with competition itself, with return to play timelines, and we did look at that first wave of competitions. If teams don't register by January 18th and they don't, they're not prepped, they don't have facilities, they can't access courts, for that first wave of competition that might start in February. It doesn't mean that, there wouldn't be a possibility to register later and compete in later events if we end up establishing sort of a wave 2 of competitions in April and May if national or provincials are pushed to June, for example. So that's something to keep in mind and to consider as well. Ideally, if athletes aren't on the court in January or even February, and we can still get them on the court with some clubs in March and April and May, that would be great as well. I'm gonna just we're gonna just talk a little bit. We have another month. We had a month prior. We have another month ahead of ourselves where ideally it's only a month, but where we have an opportunity to maybe catch up and we'll suggest and encourage clubs to start reaching out to Adam in our office here. Adam's taken over the coach compliance portfolio. lucky guy from Chris Chong. So with all of the club information forms that he's starting to receive, he is starting to populate his club information on who the coaches are going to be or are expected to be and where they are with their certification and their requirements. If you're uncertain on where a coach that you might have involved is, please reach out to him and he can check. But this is a great opportunity for coaches to start making sure that their criminal record checks are updated, their child abuse registries are done, their ethical and safe sport training, respect in sport, and this is a new one that's required by Volleyball Canada this year in Sport Canada, is the CAC Safe Sport module, and all the NCCP requirements as well. I'm just going to do another screen share here. So, if clubs do want to know what the requirements are, they can go to our website again, go under coaching, go under coach requirements, pull up 2021 coach certification, and you will then see our policy of what the requirements are for the upcoming year as it relates to NCCP and all the other elements that are required. Our staff has all done the safe sport training in the last couple of weeks, and I'll be taking the weekend probably to do, or next week to do, my respect in sport. So we're trying to update all of our requirements as well. Adam or Scott, anything might want to add on coach requirements, coach compliance?
No, I would just kind of reiterate to everyone, you already said this, John, but there's lots of time to take care of these things, and I'm kind of learning on the go as well. So by all means, feel free to reach out to me and we can figure out what's needed, whether it's head coach or assistant coach. I'm happy to kind of point you in the right direction, and we can figure out what's needed for everyone and go from there. So yeah, by all means, the sooner you get in contact with me, the sooner we can start going from there, I guess.
Yeah, and I could maybe comment just on.
Whoops, sorry, Scott. I think I muted you there. You want to unmute yourself?
So currently, we're not able to deliver in-person workshops, so we are looking at different ways to deliver that. I'm working with Volleyball Canada right now on an online version of the development coach workshop. So that will most likely be available in early 2021. The advanced development workshop most likely will not be able to be delivered in an online format. So if that is a requirement of a coach in your club this year, and we do get to a point where there is a competition, there will be exceptions granted for that, or we're discussing those scenarios, but yeah, but there will be some flexibility this year on the technical component. On the other part, the safe sport, the ethical, all that other stuff, there still won't be much flexibility on that from Volleyball Canada.
Before we go on to the next screen there, Anthony, do you want to look at some of those questions there?
Yeah, just a couple questions for Scott. What is the status of evaluations from last spring?
So the evaluations would still be pending. So the evaluation would require either an in-person observation of the coach working with the athlete, or if we get back to a situation where you could train with your athletes and record your practice, then that would be acceptable as well. So until we can get back into the gym, they're kind of pending. But there are components to the evaluation that you could start, but they won't be able to be completed until we could get back into the gym.
Thanks. Would there be any opportunity for virtual workshops?
Possibly, yep. In early 2021, the development coach workshop should be available online through Volleyball Canada.
Okay, and this I think is maybe for John. Since last year, was cut short, and since this year might not happen, for criminal record checks and child abuse registry checks, they're still on a 3-year term, right? It doesn't matter that we've missed those years. They still have to review it every 3.
Correct. Yeah. And then they were still in place for half a year last year, but it is the 3-year period, regardless of the seasons. It is the window that we're required to adhere to.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
No more questions. We can jump to
Anything
the
else,
next slide.
Scott, Adam? We're good. We can move on.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Whoop. There we go. Scott, safe return to the court. Just some hinters and some reminders for coaches to consider when we do get that opportunity to hit the court again.
Yeah, just a couple of things to consider when you're planning. I know some have been involved in camps and whatnot in the fall, maybe some school volleyball, but for those that maybe haven't, when we do get back on the court in January, February, or March, or whenever it is, things will look a little bit different. And we'll be working with Volleyball Canada and the other provinces to get as many resources as possible for you. Just a couple of items here that we listed, things you can expect, and obviously athlete safety must be the top priority, and planning and training will require a change in coaching practices. So you're going to be responsible for a little bit more, monitoring not only planning and implementing your practices, but monitoring what's going on during the practices. The other, a couple of things to point out, just the general messaging around athletes staying home when not well, and contingency plans when the coaches are not well. The coach is probably at an equal amount, or maybe even in some cases an elevated amount of risk, due to your interaction with all the players, if you're involved in multiple age groups. So, and many of us in the club scenario are coaching without an assistant coach. So, those days when maybe you don't feel like it, or you're feeling a little off, make sure that you have those plans in place, because all these things apply to the coaches as well. And the other one would be the duration of training. We talk about we're habitually used to training for a certain amount of time. It's maybe 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours, but we would encourage you to find some of the resources that are out there and make decisions that that kind of reflect the current scenario. So there's lots of literature out there on everything from sanitizing to mask use to duration and drills. So lots of new things to consider, and the fact that you may not have competition. So building in that element into your practices. How you're going to measure your skill or your evaluation, or keep the kids engaged if there may or may not have a competition to look forward to. So we'll leave it at that.
Scott, just regarding mask use there, are we planning on mandating it for coaches and athletes, as they have in other provinces?
Well, there was some more recent research just released. The American Association of Pediatrics recommended mask use. They're the first health organization anywhere to mandate the use of masks, or to recommend that masks should be worn during physical activity. And they do mention volleyball specifically in the study and in their recommendations. So we've tried to put a good document together as to why you should do it. We think that it would be probably the best choice, but like most of our other rules, a mandate is we're not going to be able to police that, and so we may just leave it at a strongly recommend when you're in your training. But if we do get to the point where competition is allowed, that is something that we would consider mandating during our competitions.
So just Chris probably is where the Ontario and Alberta had. Alberta is actually in a lockdown now until even after we are, but they had recently mandated mask use. They were the two big provinces that had. Other provinces are similar to where we were, wear them in, wear them out for athletes, but coaches and all other people within the building would be required to wear them. So there's been lots of discussion on this mask use topic. lots of research done on it, and it's a possibility, like Scott said, that we might strongly encourage it and require it for competition, but we'll continue to consider that as we move forward.
Yeah, and just one of the things that goes along with that is, if we do mandate it, there are some very real risks, that are in terms of practice, practice planning and athlete monitoring, and there were instances in the training center in Richmond where they did see some very distinct, physiological reactions to wearing a mask. So. Yeah, I mean, we do think it's the right thing to do, but if you are going to make that happen in your gym, and if we're going to make it mandatory, then there are things that need to go along with that, and certain things, additional responsibilities you as a coach are going to have to take on.
Anything else to add there, Scott?
No, that's all.
Any other questions, Anthony, in the box there you don't see?
No, we're good for now.
Okay. All right. Adam, this is you for your 2-day countdown here to plug the auction.
Yeah, you bet. We're a little less than 48 hours away from the conclusion of our auction, so I just wanted to take the time to encourage everyone to go take a look at some of the things we have up there. All the funds raised obviously go towards Volleyball Manitoba programming and events, which could definitely use a little bit of a boost. So if you have the means, we would absolutely love for you to take a look. And there's a lot of good options out there, a lot of coaching options in terms of maybe boosting your inventory of balls or things like that. And then there's obviously some experiences and some household things, but there's a little something for everyone out there. So if you're able, it'd be great. Just trying to raise funds and take a look at the auction if you have some time. That'd be great.
If you want to find out where the site is, just go to our website. You can click on auction. That'll pull you up just to this page. Click on the yellow button, and it'll take you to this page here. You can see all the different items, current bids. It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. So there's even a couple of golf rounds for when people from out west come back to Manitoba in the summer.
Scott, we got another question here. Why is duration of training a factor?
Just based on the fact that it's done indoors, the amount of time that you are, just the risk elevates the number of, the longer you're in an enclosed space where there's lots of other people.
And with the increased chance of breaching that 2-meter barrier, the longer you're in that space together, the more you're going to be within that person's 2-meter space or another person's 2-meter space, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as the practices goes on, we ran a few training sessions in the fall, and for those of you that had run training sessions, you get comfortable really quick and you fall back into your routines, and for the first 10 or 15 minutes, it's pretty diligent, but then it's kind of normal. So the behavior kind of goes back to what it's always been, and those are just moments where you can accumulate those interactions and elevate the risk.
Thanks.
That's what we just had prepared, everybody. So by all means, now's an opportunity to ask a few questions. We'll stay, Anthony, if there's any that come through, but maybe while we wait and see what questions might come through, just want to take an opportunity to thank everyone for taking the time again this evening. We really hope over the next few weeks that we continue to see a decrease in COVID counts and cases around the province, with hopes that by early January the province is going to feel that it's safe again for people to return to sport, to return to the fields of play, the rinks, and of course our volleyball courts. And we're going to wait around for a few more minutes in case there's any additional questions that roll in. But otherwise, we're always available to for emails if people do have questions. As Anthony said earlier, we're going to post this online just for those that might have missed it. But if you have any questions about anything as it relates to club or otherwise, please reach out to us. But otherwise, just on behalf of our board and staff, as holiday season is coming up, so we'd like to express our best wishes to everyone and to all of you, to your families, to our volleyball community over the coming holiday season in the coming weeks, and of course we're all hoping for a very positive start to 2021 as we get to that point. So thank you very much for everything, sincerely, for everything you do for volleyball in Manitoba. Take care, be well, and we'll communicate again very soon. I think there's a few more questions though as we go through here, Anthony.
No, not really.
No?
Hey,
Just
John,
well wishes and stuff.
Okay. If there is any clubs that are still hanging in there and just are still with or in that situation where they're really dire for facilities and where they're, wouldn't mind just getting a quick update on where they're at, what they're looking at for options, if anything at all. If some might just want to stick around for a few minutes about that, just so we understand a little bit on the scope of things as well.
John, I have a question.
Yep.
Just to kind of continue the thought on the tryout idea, I totally understand, and it makes perfect sense to think of, if we have tryouts, it's not a matter of limiting how many people can be in the gym. It's just that they're going to be bouncing around from, multiple different gyms and different athletes. So that part makes sense. But, just this thought of, us, and it's not from a competitive standpoint, it's really from a standpoint of if it's an athlete's first time playing volleyball, right? I don't see how any team is going to pick that player. And, just for like a point of reference, I mean, Justin Duff is the last Manitoban to play in the Olympics. He didn't start volleyball till 16U, right? So if the next Justin Duff at 15 years old, he's just a kid who's registered for a tryout, right? I don't know how anyone would pick that athlete. So I don't know if it's even possible, but that suggestion of, you take one of those first weekends, if you have like I said, a community-based approach where, hey, Volleyball Manitoba is going to run these drills, and all of the coaches who want to attend, you don't have to attend, right? But the clubs and coaches and club directors, whatever it may be, can attend. And at least now they can put a face to a name and they can evaluate their skills and send out their offer. And then that athlete at least has the chance to show what they can do. But I think we're in a tough spot if we're encouraging clubs to make decisions, because that's only going to favor returning players, right? And that's great that we know who those players are from the year before, but there's a lot of kids out there who we have no idea who they are. And it's hard for us, like we talk about, we just want to keep kids playing. But the reality is, if we turn away kids who don't even get a chance to try out, then we probably lose those kids forever, because we didn't get them in school. We're not going to get them now in club. And what's their motivation to keep going? So if there's a way to make it happen, I think that would be a great compromise. And we just say, hey, tryouts aren't allowed. You can't have tryouts. But we as a association are going to run this, 1 day, 2 day, weekend long thing where clubs can come in and see somebody, and then they can send those offers. And then the athlete has a chance to sign with whatever club they feel is the best fit for them.
So I'll just answer that. Like, won't, we'll take that, Jared, and consider it. There is still a capacity thing. So if we are going to do a tryout, it would be, again, just a Winnipeg thing, right? And
yep.
Is there opportunities or a need to do this in Brandon or other communities? We just need to be conscientious of the provincial scope of what we're doing and delivering. But by all means, we'll take it and consider it a little bit more. We do have plans to still run that development program that is intended to try and catch kids that might not have been selected for a team. And our focus is on the younger ages, especially the younger ages, 13 and 14. But but it doesn't mean that, that a kid might register for that because they didn't make a club, but they might still want to be on a club. We can flip them over if there's an opportunity for coaches to observe or something along those lines. So we'll think about that.
Okay, thank you. And then just the second question is just, has there been any discussion on how many coaches, like Scott talked about being prepared to have, maybe a situation where you only have one coach and then you're not feeling well, puts you in a bad spot, but a discussion about how many coaches we can have. There's kind of been talk about maybe only one assistant coach. Can we still have 2 assistant coaches? Has there been any discussion about that?
Scott, maybe Scott, that might be more your line.
Yeah, I think Jared, it has more to do with the space, right? The space that you're training in. So if you can accommodate 2 coaches or 3 coaches in the training space that you have, then then I think it would be fine. There's no reason why you couldn't do that. When we get a little bit closer to the competition and things like a competitive cohort or what that might look like in the gym, we'd probably have to limit, if we use Dakota Community Club as an example, we'd probably have to limit the total number of people that would be in a space like that, just to meet the current public health regulations. But yeah, I mean, if you were using 2 courts at Seoul, for example, there's plenty of space there for staff.
Okay, thank you.
There's just a comment there, Jared, and others from Evan Morris, just about, if there's an athlete approaching you interested, there is a virtual video submission concept that national teams obviously use or USA ran for tryouts, just as a concept to consider. If there was a Duff athlete and was 6'6" at 16 and can touch 11.6, you'd probably keep them regardless of their setting and passing ability. Just as an idea or as a consideration.
John, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So my situation, or at least what I'm finding right now, is I've got lots of interest, etc. The problem is, what I'm finding is schools are willing to let me come in and do stuff, but I can only work with the kids that are from that school. So, which would mean that if I'm running whatever age group X team and I've got kids from 5 or 6 different communities, that means I'm only going to be able to practice with whatever the 3 kids from this school at this school, et cetera, in order to make it work. So I'm not like, I can't physically or even possibly do that, because it's at least during the week or even on the weekends. Like I'd have to have 5 different coaches and blah, blah, blah. So I'm really struggling with how to actually make this work.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I don't have an answer for you. There's others on the dial here that maybe might have a suggestion, but like we said, it's not going to be normal this year, right? And I think in your case, Pat, if that does end up continuing to be the case, I think you're just gonna, and you want to still do something, you might need to just look at trying to do something with the schools that you have and those kids that are in those schools.
Yeah, the problem is you're only going to have 2 or 3 from this school, 2 or 3 from this school, 2 or like.
I know.
And it gets worse when I get into the younger age groups. Like I've got lots of interest, but I mean, if I've got a 14U team, I'd love to be able, assuming that there are nationals and everything to attend, but it could mean that I've only got 5 kids from this building, 5 from this building, 3 from that building, and I'm really stuck at how to even try and make this go.
Yeah, we can do a follow up on that, Pat. I don't have any concrete advice I could give you right now on in that regards.
Okay.
I don't know.
I guess there's no opportunity in the area for like a 3rd facility, so to speak, that Like
Well,
numbers?
we can't get into any of the community centers because who knows when they'll ever open. Like I know I can get space at schools,
Mhm.
but they're just saying they don't want cohorts to mix.
Yeah, that's
So then
difficult, and I'm sure it's one
yeah.
of those things a lot of rural communities are dealing with.
Yeah, and this isn't a unique thing, Pat. Like there's probably other communities, clubs out there from various communities, even clubs from within Winnipeg that rely heavily on school gymnasiums and don't have access right now. This is a consistent issue from BC to Newfoundland. It really is from every province. This is their biggest challenge is for.
So I know at one point, and I don't remember where this came from, but somebody had mentioned the possibility of, let's say on Anthony, on the tournaments or whatever, that the mini tournaments on the weekend, that you might be able to get a little bit of a slot to bring your group together to practice in the morning, and then you do mid-afternoon, afternoon, evening competitions or something like that. Is that at all a possibility?
I would say it's not outside the realm of possibility. That sort of thing is something we haven't really talked about directly in terms of like having some space open on the day for practices and then competition later. But it could be something we could talk about.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just jump in. It's Kyla from Selkirk, and kind of similar to Pat, we're obviously really struggling with Selkirk facilities. So we don't have access to any of the schools, whether it's the kids are from that school or not. So I wrote in the chat, like, I'm just having a hard time understanding what to write on my registration form, because like at this point we're locked out, and like I know it's not going to be changing come January or February. Like maybe we'd be lucky in the springtime. But like the superintendent, like even the swimming pool isn't open. So we have completely nowhere to go basically. So like, do I send in that registration form? Like I don't know what I would even really write on it.
I think the registration form, Kyla, is primarily who your coaches potentially could be, and the teams that you are considering if you get facility access to run them. It doesn't mean you're locked in or you're committed. Primarily, it's more just to start developing that framework if your club does end up happening.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to even, the idea right now of like trying to get coaches when our superintendent's saying just no, like nothing changing anytime soon. So yeah, we're just really stumped on what to do kind of out there.
Yeah, and Donna from Pirates, same boat. Yeah, so there's no urgency then. If you want to wait till January, if you want to have a better idea by at that point,
Okay.
that whether it's going to happen or not, by all means, especially if you're uncertain, then there's no real urgency at this point right now.
Okay, thanks.
So Tonya, you're asking about, you have a potential 18U team, but maybe not enough players. Reach out to Anthony. He does have a list of players that that have expressed interest. I don't know if they actually fit 18U or not, but this is also now whoever's left online, if they might know of other athletes in that age category that might be looking for a club, we can connect you with them.
Yeah, also 14U, like we wanted to, because now Dave Brandt is gone, I've taken over Insanity. I want to start slowly ramping up with some other age categories, and this is a bad year to start. I have 14U coach and assistant coach in place, but no players because we've never run a 14U before. And no matter how much social media plugging we've done and everything, we've had, nobody expressing interest in tryouts because, they don't even think there's going to be a season. So I get it that it's easy for those clubs with the returning players or who have, you know, everybody knows they're already established there. I've got gym times booked when the gym's actually open. I just don't have kids.
You know, I would,
So
again, if there's other clubs that might be in the similar boat, is there an opportunity to, you know, to merge, just to get
sure.
a joint team together? You know, that's one potential. You are in a fortunate position. You have gym time. You don't have athletes. By all means, I think there's going to be athletes out there, and I don't think you need to, you know, right now and on December 9th, have to say I don't have enough athletes. I can't run a team. By January 9th, 15th, end of January, I think you're going to see athletes looking for opportunities.
Yeah, I would say you probably want to try and reach out to some of the clubs that might have been bigger last year that are probably running fewer teams this year, just to see if you can reach out to some of the athletes who maybe they haven't been able to accommodate. That might be your best bet if you're looking to do something directly.
And then by the end of next week, we'll be sending out another, you know, newsletter, and within it, we'll do another note. Athletes looking for teams looking for athletes, contact us.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Just another note there about players from the rural clubs from different town schools will be an issue for the rural-based clubs. I'm not sure who iPhone is there. Yeah, and we get that again, like we said, the facility access is the biggest challenge that clubs are facing right now for the most part.
We should probably give last call here, John.
Yep, sounds good. Any other comments from anybody or questions before we wrap up? Okay, well, again, thanks everybody. Really appreciate it. Please, again, reach out with any questions through email that you might have. And like I said, again, all the best over the holidays. Take care, everybody.